is entirely because I worry about your grandchildren and everybody else's grandchildren as well as my own.
Something is wrong inside the palace, and everyone can feel it. Rumors are spreading fast about a new scandal around King Charles, but the real shock is Camilla's name suddenly being pulled into the mess. For days, the palace refused to speak, and that silence only made people more worried. Now they've finally said something, but their words raise even more questions. What are they still hiding from the public? The silence before the storm. For nearly a week, Buckingham Palace refuses to comment on anything. Journalists call, they email, they wait outside the gates with cameras and microphones, but the palace stays silent. That silence makes people nervous. It makes them suspicious, because when powerful institutions go quiet, it usually means they're hiding something. The rumors started small, a whisper here, a leaked message there. Someone inside one of King Charles's private charities noticed something strange in the financial records. Numbers didn't add up. Meetings were kept off official calendars. Documents looked like they'd been changed after they were signed. At first, people brushed it off. Mistakes happen. But then more details surfaced, and those details painted a darker picture. Anonymous sources began talking to the press. They didn't give their names, they couldn't, but they shared enough to make the story explode. They said money was missing. Not a little, a lot. They said certain transactions were approved without proper oversight. They said senior aides knew about it and did nothing. And worst of all, they said some of those decisions came from the very top. The media doesn't let go of stories like this. Every day, new articles appear. Television anchors discuss it during breakfast shows. Social media lights up with theories and accusations. The public watches closely. They want answers. They deserve answers. But the palace gives them nothing. Inside those ancient walls, the atmosphere grows more tense by the hour. Advisors argue behind closed doors. Some want to release a statement immediately. Others warn that speaking too soon could make things worse. The king himself seems caught between anger and exhaustion. He built his reputation on transparency and moral duty. Now that reputation feels fragile. Then something happens that changes everything. A whistleblower steps forward, not publicly but privately. They contact a major newspaper. They say they have proof, emails, documents, evidence that connects senior palace aides directly to the financial scandal. They promise to release everything within days. But before they can, they vanish, not literally. They don't disappear into thin air, but they go silent. They stop answering calls. They delete their social media accounts. Friends say they seemed frightened. Colleagues say they were threatened. No one knows for sure what happened, but the timing feels too convenient, too calculated. The palace still says nothing, but that silence now feels different. It doesn't feel like caution anymore. It feels like fear. It feels like an institution desperately trying to hold itself together, while the cracks spread wider beneath the surface. Staff begin to wonder how long this can last. How long before the walls finally break? How long before the truth, whatever it is, comes flooding out? And somewhere deep inside those palace walls, people are making decisions about what to protect, what to sacrifice, who to blame. Because when an institution this old and this powerful feels threatened, it doesn't just defend itself, it fights. And in that fight, not everyone survives. Camilla's name slips into the headlines. It starts with a single document, one piece of paper that slips through the cracks and lands in the hands of a journalist who knows exactly what they're looking at. The document is internal, official, stamped with dates and signatures, and right there near the bottom of a list of approvals are two initials, CR Camilla Regina, the Queen. The moment that document goes public, everything shifts. Suddenly, this isn't just about King Charles's charity. It isn't just about money or mismanagement or careless oversight. Now it's about her. The woman who spent decades fighting for acceptance. The woman who clawed her way from mistress to wife to queen consort. The woman millions still refuse to forgive. The headlines hit hard and fast. Queen Camilla's name linked to financial scandal. Palace documents show Camilla advised King on questionable decisions. Did the Queen know what was happening? The public reacts immediately. Some are shocked, some are angry. Some say they knew all along that she couldn't be trusted. Social media explodes. People demand answers. They want to know why Camilla's initials appear on documents related to financial decisions inside the king's charity. Why was she involved at all? What advice did she give? Did she know the money was being mishandled? Did she approve it herself? Her supporters push back. They say she's being scapegoated. They argue that her initials appearing on a document doesn't prove anything. Maybe she glanced at a report. Maybe she was copied on an email. That doesn't make her guilty. But the critics aren't convinced. They point out that Camilla has always been more involved behind the scenes than the palace admits. They say she's been quietly shaping Charles's decisions for years. And now finally there's proof. The palace tries to downplay it. Spokespeople remind the press that Queen Camilla holds no official role in managing the king's charities. Her involvement, if any, would have been informal, personal. Just a wife offering her husband advice, nothing more. But that explanation doesn't calm anyone down. In fact, it makes things worse. Because if Camilla was advising the king on financial matters, what exactly did she tell him? And why keep it quiet? Then another leak comes. This one is darker. A former staff member, someone who worked closely with the king's charity operations, speaks to the press under the condition of anonymity. They say they were pressured to minimize Camilla's involvement in official reports, pressured to make it look like she had less influence than she actually did. They describe meetings where Camilla sat in the room offering opinions, shaping decisions, but afterward, when those meetings were documented, her name was left out, erased, as if she was never there. The claim is explosive. If it's true, it means the palace has been deliberately hiding Camilla's role, not just in this scandal, but in the king's decision-making overall. It suggests a pattern, a system designed to protect her image while she operates in the shadows. And that raises a terrifying question. What else has been hidden? Public trust begins to crack. People who once defended Camilla start to waver. Even those who don't care about the monarchy feel uneasy. Because this isn't just about royalty anymore. It's about power. It's about who really makes the decisions. It's about whether the public is being lied to by the very institution that's supposed to represent them. Inside the palace, panic sets in. Advisors scramble to contain the damage, but every move they make seems to backfire. Every statement they release only fuels more questions. And as Camilla's name spreads across every newspaper and news channel in the country, one thing becomes painfully clear. This story is far from over. In fact, it's only just beginning. The palace finally speaks and makes things worse. The pressure becomes unbearable. Journalists camp outside the palace gates day and night. Camera crews set up on the streets. News anchors speculate endlessly about what's happening behind those closed doors. The public grows angrier with each passing hour of silence. Members of parliament start asking questions. Opposition leaders demand transparency. Even some of the king's longtime allies begin to distance themselves quietly. Finally, the palace decides it has no choice. They have to say something. They schedule a formal statement. No press conference, no interviews. Just words on official letterhead released to the media at exactly 9 o'clock on a gray Tuesday morning. The statement is carefully worded. Every sentence feels calculated. It confirms that Queen Camilla was aware of certain decisions made within the king's charitable organizations. But it insists she had no direct involvement in financial operations. Her role, the statement claims, was purely advisory. She offered private counsel to her husband on matters he brought to her attention. Nothing more. Nothing inappropriate. The palace emphasizes that Camilla holds no formal position within any of the king's charities. She attended no board meetings, she signed no checks, she made no executive decisions. Her participation, they say, has been mischaracterized by those seeking to damage the monarchy's reputation. The statement ends with a firm declaration. Queen Camilla acted with complete propriety at all times. Any suggestion otherwise is categorically false. For about 30 seconds, it seems like the statement might work. Then the backlash begins. The problem is obvious to everyone reading it. If Camilla had no direct involvement, why mention her at all? If she only gave private advice, what kind of advice was it? The palace says she influenced nothing, yet her initials appear on official documents. They say she held no formal role, yet former staff members claim she sat in meetings that shaped major decisions. The wording feels slippery, evasive. It answers some questions while creating dozens more. People don't feel reassured. They feel manipulated. Legal experts weigh in on television. They point out that private advice can still carry enormous weight when it comes from a queen to a king. Political analysts note that the palace is trying to have it both ways. They want to acknowledge Camilla's presence in the decision-making process while denying she had any real power. But those two things can't both be true. Within hours, the statement becomes the subject of mockery and outrage. Satirical cartoons appear online showing Camilla whispering in Charles's ear while documents pile up around them. Opinion pieces accuse the palace of treating the public like fools. Trust, already fragile, shatters further. Then comes the leak that changes everything. An internal memo surfaces. It's dated 3 days before the official statement was released. The memo comes from a senior communications advisor and is addressed to the king's private secretary. The language is blunt and alarming. The memo warns that protecting Queen Camilla at this stage could expose the king to even greater scrutiny. It suggests that the charity scandal might be connected to other sensitive matters involving both the king and queen. It recommends full transparency immediately, before things spiral further out of control. But the memo also contains a chilling line near the end. If we continue down this path, we risk revealing issues that go far beyond financial mismanagement. Issues that neither His Majesty nor Her Majesty can afford to have examined publicly. The press goes wild. What issues? What secrets are being protected? The memo doesn't explain, but its existence proves that senior palace officials know there's more to this story. Much more. The palace refuses to comment on the leaked memo. They call it stolen property. They threaten legal action against whoever released it. But the damage is done. The official statement, meant to calm the storm, has only made it worse. And now everyone is asking the same question. What exactly are Charles and Camilla hiding? Cracks in the marriage. Behind the heavy doors and ancient stone walls, the atmosphere turns cold. Staff members who have worked at the palace for decades say they've never seen anything like it. The king and queen, once inseparable in public, now seem to occupy different worlds even when they're in the same room. Charles grows increasingly defensive. He snaps at advisors who suggest he distance himself from Camilla to protect his own reputation. He refuses to entertain any strategy that involves throwing his wife under scrutiny, but his loyalty comes with a cost. He looks exhausted. The weight of the scandal shows in his face. Lines deepen. His hands shake slightly when he reviews documents. Sleep doesn't come easily anymore. He built his entire reign on the idea of a modern, transparent monarchy. He spent years preparing to be king. He promised to serve with integrity and honesty. Now that promise feels like it's crumbling. And the worst part is that he can't figure out how to fix it without sacrificing someone he loves. Camilla, on the other hand, feels betrayed in a different way. She expected the palace machine to protect her. She thought that after everything she endured after finally being accepted as queen, the institution would stand behind her. But instead, she sees hesitation. She hears whispers from advisors, suggesting she step back from public life temporarily. She reads leaked memos that treat her like a liability. The hurt runs deep. She fought for decades to earn her place beside Charles. She weathered public hatred, vicious headlines, and endless comparisons to Diana. She proved herself over and over again, and now, when she needs support the most, she feels abandoned. The tension between them becomes impossible to hide. Staff notice that Charles and Camilla no longer have breakfast together. Their schedules, once coordinated, now seem deliberately separated. When they do appear together for official duties, the warmth is gone. They smile for cameras, but the smiles don't reach their eyes. Private conversations between them grow strained. Charles tries to reassure Camilla that everything will be fine, but even he doesn't sound convinced. Camilla pushes back, demanding that the palace release stronger statements defending her. She wants names cleared. She wants accusations refuted, but Charles's advisors tell him that doing so would only draw more attention to the scandal. They argue about strategy. They argue about trust. They argue about who's really in charge of managing this crisis. And underneath all of it, there's a fear neither of them wants to admit, that this might not be something they can survive together. Then comes the night that changes everything between them. It's late, past midnight. Most of the palace staff have gone home. Only security and a few essential personnel remain on duty. One of those staff members, a longtime palace employee, is walking past a private sitting room when they hear raised voices. The king and queen are inside. The door is thick, but not thick enough. Words slip through. Angry words. Desperate words. The staff member can't make out everything, but they hear enough. They hear Camilla's voice sharp with frustration, saying something about last year, about something that happened that was supposed to stay buried. They hear Charles respond, his tone defensive, insisting that what happened then has nothing to do with what's happening now. But Camilla doesn't agree. She says it has everything to do with it. She says if the truth about last year comes out, the charity scandal will look like nothing in comparison. Her voice breaks slightly. She sounds frightened. And that's what shocks the staff member most, because Camilla never sounds frightened. The conversation continues, but the staff member forces themselves to walk away. They know they've already heard too much, but they can't unhear it. And they can't stop wondering what happened last year that scares the queen so badly. By morning, rumors about the argument spread quietly through the palace. No one knows exactly what was said, but everyone knows that something fundamental has shifted. The king and queen aren't just facing a public scandal anymore. They're facing something private, something personal, something that threatens not just the monarchy, but their marriage itself. And whatever that something is, it's getting closer to the surface with every passing day. A second scandal emerges. The palace barely has time to breathe before the next blow lands. Just when advisors think they might be getting ahead of the charity scandal, when they're working 18-hour days crafting responses and managing media fallout, something else breaks, something worse. It starts with a routine security audit at Clarence House. These audits happen regularly. They're supposed to be simple, a formality. But this time, someone notices that access logs don't match up. Computer files were opened at odd hours, some documents were copied, others were moved to external drives. The security team runs a deeper check. What they find makes their blood run cold. Sensitive files are missing. Not just any files. High-level confidential documents. Some contain private medical information about the king. Detailed reports from his doctors, test results, treatment plans. Information that should never leave secure palace servers. Other missing files include internal communications between Charles and his most trusted advisors, strategy documents, legal assessments, private correspondence that discusses everything from family matters to state business. The breach is sophisticated. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for and how to access it without triggering immediate alarms. This wasn't some random hacker trying their luck. This was planned, professional, and it came from inside. The palace goes into lockdown mode. The security breach is classified as a crisis-level threat. Investigators are brought in quietly. They interview staff. They review surveillance footage. They trace digital footprints. But the person responsible covered their tracks well, too well. The palace tries desperately to keep the breach secret. If word gets out that confidential royal files have been stolen, the media firestorm will be unstoppable. But secrets this big never stay hidden for long. 3 days after the breach is discovered, a journalist receives an anonymous package. Inside is a single document. It's marked confidential and dated from 6 months ago. The document is a report prepared for the king's senior medical team. But it's not about his health. It's about what information should be shared publicly about his health. And right there, highlighted in yellow, is a section that mentions Queen Camilla by name. According to the report, Camilla requested multiple meetings with the king's doctors. She wanted to understand exactly what would be disclosed to the public about Charles's medical condition and what would remain private. The report notes that she had strong opinions about which details should be withheld. She argued that certain information, if released, could be misinterpreted and damage public confidence in the king's ability to serve. The doctors pushed back. They explained that transparency was important, that hiding too much could backfire, but Camilla was insistent. The report describes her as being particularly concerned about one specific medical issue. The document doesn't say what that issue is. The relevant section has been redacted, blacked out completely. When the journalist publishes the story, it detonates like a bomb. The public reaction is immediate and fierce. People are outraged that Camilla was trying to control what information they received about their king's health. They feel deceived, manipulated. They wonder what she was trying to hide and why. Medical privacy advocates argue that Camilla was just being a protective spouse, that she had every right to be involved in decisions about her husband's medical disclosures. But critics see something darker. They say this proves Camilla has been operating behind the scenes, shaping narratives, controlling information flow. They say it's part of a pattern of secrecy and manipulation. More questions flood in. What medical issue was she so worried about? How serious is the king's condition? Has the public been lied to about his ability to fulfill his duties? And most disturbing of all, who stole these files and why are they being leaked now? Inside the palace, paranoia sets in. If one document leaked, what else is out there? Security teams conduct sweep after sweep, but they can't find the source. Staff members eye each other with suspicion. Trust evaporates. And somewhere out there, someone sits on a collection of stolen files, choosing very carefully what to release and when. The public turns. The shift happens gradually at first, then all at once. For years, Charles enjoyed steady public support. People saw him as thoughtful, dedicated, someone who genuinely cared about important causes. Even those who didn't love the monarchy respected his commitment. Camilla's approval ratings were lower, always complicated by history, but they'd been improving. Slowly but surely, people were accepting her. Now all of that goodwill crumbles like old stone. It starts in the comments sections. Social media posts that used to defend the king and queen now tear them apart. People who once argued that Camilla deserved a second chance now say they were naive to trust her. The tone shifts from disappointment to anger, from anger to something colder, contempt. Opinion polls show the change in brutal detail. The monarchy's approval rating drops 10 points in a single week, then another 5 points the week after. Charles's personal favorability numbers sink to levels not seen since the darkest days after Diana's death. Camilla's numbers fall even further. Nearly 60% of people surveyed say they don't trust her. Almost half say she should step back from public duties entirely. The protests start small. A dozen people outside Buckingham Palace holding signs. Security watches nervously but doesn't intervene. It's a free country. People have a right to protest. But the crowds grow. Within days, hundreds gather, then thousands. They're not violent, not destructive, but they're loud and persistent. They chant for transparency. They demand answers. Some carry images of Diana, a pointed reminder of the past that Camilla can never escape. Media coverage intensifies. News broadcasts lead with palace scandal every single night. Morning shows discuss nothing else. Even international outlets pick up the story. The British monarchy, an institution that survived wars and revolutions, is being brought low by leaked documents and broken trust. Editorial pages turn vicious. Major newspapers publish scathing pieces questioning whether Charles is fit to lead. One headline reads, "A king who can't control his own household." Another asks, "What else are they lying about?" The tabloids go even further. They dig up every old rumor, every past scandal, every hint of impropriety from Charles and Camilla's long and complicated history. The establishment begins to fracture. Members of parliament who usually stay silent about the royal family start speaking out. They call for investigations. They demand accountability. Religious leaders express concern. Charles is the head of the Church of England. Questions about his integrity are questions about the church itself. Some clergy quietly distance themselves. Then comes the anonymous testimony that makes everything worse. A journalist known for breaking major palace stories publishes a piece based on information from an unnamed source. Someone who worked closely with the royal family. Someone with direct knowledge of what happens behind closed doors. The source makes explosive claims. They say Camilla knows far more about Charles's medical condition than she's ever admitted publicly. They describe situations where she controlled which doctors had access to the king, where she sat in on private medical consultations and influenced treatment decisions, where she made choices about his care that even his own children weren't informed about. The source goes further. They claim Camilla once blocked a specialist from seeing Charles because she disagreed with their recommended treatment approach. They say she's been managing his public schedule to hide the true extent of his health challenges. They paint a picture of a woman who's not just protective, but controlling. The palace issues an immediate denial. They call the claims defamatory and completely without merit. They threaten legal action. But the threat rings hollow. The palace has been denying everything for weeks now, and nothing they say carries weight anymore. Public sympathy evaporates completely. People see Camilla as a manipulator, someone who spent decades fighting to become queen so she could control the king. The narrative takes hold and spreads like wildfire. Protests intensify. Security increases personnel, and the institution that once seemed unshakable now looks fragile, vulnerable, and the public that once loved their king has turned away. The shadow advisor rumor. The whispers start in the darkest corners of the internet. Anonymous accounts posting cryptic messages, hints about someone close to Camilla, someone who doesn't work for the palace, someone who shouldn't have access to royal business but somehow does. At first, the mainstream media ignores it. These kinds of conspiracy theories pop up constantly. Most of them lead nowhere. But this time, the whispers don't fade. They grow louder, more specific, more credible. A political blogger with a reputation for accuracy posts a detailed thread. They claim that for the past 2 years, Queen Camilla has been consulting with a private advisor, not someone on the palace payroll, not someone vetted by security, an outsider, someone whose name doesn't appear on any official documents or visitor logs, someone who meets with Camilla at irregular times, often at private residences away from palace grounds. The blogger doesn't reveal the advisor's identity. They say they're protecting their source, but they provide enough detail to make the story impossible to dismiss. They describe the advisor as someone with deep connections in business and finance, someone who understands how money moves through charitable organizations, someone who knows how to keep transactions quiet. Within hours, other journalists start digging. They make calls, they check records, they talk to former palace staff, and slowly a picture emerges. Multiple sources confirm that Camilla does indeed have a close relationship with someone outside the official palace circle, someone she trusts deeply, someone she turns to for advice on matters she doesn't want filtered through the king's official team. The palace refuses to comment. That refusal feels like confirmation. The revelation sends shockwaves through an already unstable situation. People demand to know who this mysterious advisor is. They want to know what kind of advice this person has been giving. They want to know if the king even knows about it. The idea of Camilla building her own private network, separate from the palace infrastructure, terrifies the institution's defenders and energizes its critics. Senior palace officials are reportedly furious. The entire point of the royal household system is control, transparency, accountability. Everyone who advises the king and queen is supposed to be vetted, approved, and monitored. The suggestion that Camilla has been circumventing that system represents a fundamental breakdown in protocol. But the story gets darker, much darker. A financial investigator, someone who's been following the charity scandal from the beginning, publishes a bombshell analysis. They've been tracing money flows from the king's charity, following payments that seemed unusual, donations that went to organizations that didn't quite add up, and they found something disturbing. Some of the money, thousands of pounds, went to a private consulting firm. The firm is small, barely visible online. But when the investigator digs into the company's registration documents, they find a connection. One of the firm's directors has personal ties to someone in Camilla's inner circle, someone who matches the description of the mysterious shadow advisor. The implication is staggering. If charity money was redirected to a group connected to Camilla's private advisor, it suggests something far more serious than simple mismanagement. It suggests coordination, planning, possibly even fraud. The palace immediately denies any wrongdoing. They say the consulting firm was hired for legitimate services. They insist that all charitable expenditures were proper and documented, but they still won't name the advisor. They still won't explain why Camilla needed someone outside the official palace system. Trust in the palace reaches a new low. People feel like they're watching a cover-up unfold in real time. The charity scandal, the security breach, the medical secrets, and now this. A shadow advisor with possible financial connections to missing money. It's too much, too coordinated, too suspicious. Inside the palace, the hierarchy fractures. Some advisors believe Camilla must come forward and explain herself. Others argue that acknowledging the shadow advisor's existence will only make things worse. The king's team splits between those loyal to Charles and those who think protecting Camilla is destroying him. Meanwhile, investigators continue following the money. Journalists continue digging into the mysterious advisor's background, and the public watches with a mixture of fascination and disgust as the most famous family in Britain tears itself apart from the inside. The shadow advisor remains unnamed, but their presence looms over everything now. A faceless figure representing all the secrets the palace has been keeping, all the lies they've been telling, all the trust they've been breaking. And people want answers. The hidden emails. The leak comes without warning. One morning, a major newspaper publishes something that changes the entire scandal. Not rumors this time, not anonymous testimony or suspicious documents, actual emails. Private correspondence between King Charles and Queen Camilla. Messages that were never meant to see daylight. The newspaper explains that they received the emails from an encrypted source. They verified their authenticity through digital forensics and cross-referencing with known palace communication patterns. These are real, and they're devastating. The emails span several months. They discuss decisions that Charles was making regarding his charitable organizations, decisions that are now under investigation. And in message after message, Charles asks for Camilla's opinion. He runs ideas past her. He seeks her approval before moving forward. In one email, Charles writes about a proposed restructuring of one of his charities. He's uncertain about the plan. He lists concerns. Then he explicitly asks Camilla what she thinks he should do. Her response comes hours later. She tells him the restructuring makes sense. She says the people pushing for it are trustworthy. She encourages him to approve it. 2 days later, Charles approves the restructuring. That same restructuring is now part of the financial scandal investigation. Another email shows Charles forwarding a confidential financial report to Camilla. He asks if she sees any red flags. She responds that everything looks fine to her. The report contains transactions that investigators later flagged as questionable. The pattern repeats throughout the leaked correspondence. Charles seeking Camilla's input, Camilla offering guidance, Charles acting on that guidance. The emails prove beyond any doubt that Camilla was deeply involved in decision-making processes that the palace repeatedly claimed she had no part in. But it's one particular email that stops people cold. It's brief, only a few lines. But those lines carry enormous weight. Charles writes to Camilla late at night. He sounds stressed, worried. He mentions pressure from his advisors about certain decisions. He says he's concerned about how things will look if they come to light. Then he writes something chilling. If this gets out, the entire institution will collapse. Camilla's response is equally brief. She tells him not to panic. She says they've handled worse. She reminds him that they just need to stay united, that as long as they present a strong front, they'll survive. The email doesn't specify what this refers to. It doesn't explain what might cause the institution to collapse. But the desperation in Charles's words is obvious. This isn't a man worried about bad publicity. This is a man terrified of something much bigger. The public reaction is immediate and overwhelming. The emails prove that the palace has been lying. They prove that Camilla was advising the king on matters now under investigation. They prove that both Charles and Camilla knew their decisions could destroy the monarchy if exposed. Legal experts analyze the emails on television. Some argue that the correspondence shows poor judgment but not necessarily criminal activity. Others point out that if Charles approved financial decisions based on advice from someone with no official oversight, he may have violated his own charitable organization's governance rules. Political analysts focus on the institutional implications. The monarchy survives on public trust. These emails show the king and queen deliberately hiding information, making decisions in private that should have been transparent, and worrying about protecting themselves rather than serving the public. The palace's response is panicked and scattered. They condemn the leak as a criminal invasion of privacy. They point out that private correspondence between a husband and wife should remain private. They argue that taking emails out of context creates false narratives, but none of that matters anymore. The emails exist. People have read them. They've formed their own conclusions, and those conclusions are damning. Calls for Charles to abdicate start appearing in opinion columns. Members of Parliament suggest that if the king can't manage his own affairs ethically, perhaps he shouldn't be managing the nation symbolically. Public protests grow larger and angrier. Inside the palace, the situation approaches total breakdown. Staff who leaked information are being hunted. Security protocols are being overhauled. Trust between departments evaporates completely. Everyone suspects everyone. Charles and Camilla, once partners united against the world, now face questions about whether their partnership itself is the problem. The emails reveal a marriage where secrets are shared and protected, where decisions are made in private and justified in public, where the institution's survival matters more than its integrity. And somewhere out there, someone still has more files, more documents, more secrets. The emails are just the latest weapon in a calculated campaign to bring down the monarchy, and it's working. The Palace War Room. Deep inside Buckingham Palace, in a windowless conference room that most staff don't even know exists, a crisis team assembles. These are the most senior advisors in the royal household: communications directors, legal counsel, the king's private secretary, the queen's chief of staff, people who've dedicated their lives to protecting the crown. They gather because the situation has reached a breaking point. Something has to be done. Now. The atmosphere is tense, exhausted. These people haven't slept properly in weeks. They've been fighting fires non-stop, watching each carefully crafted statement blow up in their faces, seeing public trust disintegrate day by day. They're running out of options, running out of time. Two opposing strategies emerge almost immediately. The room splits into factions. One side argues that the only way to save Charles is to distance him from Camilla, publicly and decisively. They say she's become toxic, a liability the monarchy can't afford. They propose that Camilla step back from all public duties, that she issue a statement taking responsibility for any misjudgments, that she essentially sacrifice herself to protect the king and the institution. The other faction refuses. They argue that throwing Camilla aside would make Charles look weak and cruel, that it would confirm the worst narratives about their marriage, that it would prove the palace operates without loyalty or decency. They say Charles and Camilla must stand together, present a united front, weather the storm as a team. The arguments grow heated. Voices rise. People who've worked together for years now look at each other with suspicion and contempt. Someone suggests releasing all the facts, complete transparency, lay everything bare and let the public judge. Others call that idea suicidal. They say there are things the public can never know, things that would genuinely destroy the monarchy if revealed. The king himself isn't in the room. He's upstairs, isolated, reportedly unwilling to engage with the crisis team. Some advisors think he's paralyzed by indecision. Others believe he's protecting Camilla regardless of the cost. Either way, his absence makes everything harder. Decisions that should come from the king are being made by exhausted staff members who don't have the authority to implement them. Then something happens that makes everything worse. One of the senior advisors, someone who's been pushing hardest for Camilla to take responsibility, is fired. The decision comes suddenly, without warning. The advisor is escorted out of the palace by security, given no explanation, just gone. Within hours, that former advisor contacts a journalist. They're careful with their words. They don't reveal specific secrets, but they make one thing very clear. They have evidence the public hasn't seen yet. Documents that prove the scandal goes deeper than anyone imagines. They hint that when this evidence comes out, it won't just be about money or medical privacy or shadow advisors. It will be about something that strikes at the very heart of the monarchy's legitimacy. The journalist publishes the interview. The fired advisor's warning spreads across every media platform. The palace war room realizes they're not just fighting a PR battle anymore, they're fighting for survival, and they might already be losing. The final statement that changes everything. The palace spends 72 hours crafting their response. Every word is debated. Every phrase is analyzed. Legal teams review it. Communications experts refine it. The king himself reportedly rewrites entire sections. This statement has to be perfect. It has to end the bleeding. It has to restore some shred of credibility. When it finally comes, the tone is different from anything the palace has released before. No more careful deflections. No more technical language designed to obscure. This statement is heavy, serious, almost somber. It confirms that Queen Camilla offered guidance to the king during sensitive periods, that her involvement was more substantial than previously acknowledged, but it insists, firmly and repeatedly, that she acted with the best intentions, that she was trying to protect both her husband and the institution, that every decision she influenced was made in good faith. The statement addresses the shadow advisor directly. It confirms that Camilla consulted with an external individual for perspective on certain matters, but it denies that this person had any inappropriate access or influence over official decisions. It characterizes the relationship as informal and occasional, nothing more. Regarding the medical documents, the statement says Camilla was naturally concerned about her husband's privacy and well-being, that she participated in discussions about what health information should be public, but that all final decisions were made by the king's medical team and the king himself. On the financial scandal, the statement acknowledges that mistakes were made in the management of charitable funds. It promises full cooperation with any investigations. It pledges reforms to ensure better oversight in the future, but it stops short of admitting wrongdoing. The statement ends with a personal note. It says the king and queen remain committed to serving the British people, that they understand public concern, that they're dedicated to rebuilding trust. It sounds good, professional, carefully constructed, but it feels empty, hollow, like words designed to fill space rather than reveal truth. The public's reaction is swift and brutal. People don't feel reassured. They feel patronized. The statement admits just enough to seem honest while revealing nothing substantial. It raises more questions than it answers. What exactly was Camilla's guidance? What did the shadow advisor really do? What medical information is still being hidden? Trust doesn't rebuild. It fractures further. The statement that was supposed to calm the storm only proves that the palace still doesn't understand the depth of public anger, still doesn't grasp that people don't want careful wording, they want truth. Then just hours after the statement is released, one final leak hits the press. An unnamed palace insider sends a message to multiple journalists. It's brief but chilling. The palace is hiding the biggest part of the story, and when it comes out, it won't just be about money or Camilla. It will be about something that happened years ago, something they buried, something that connects everything. And when the public learns the truth, the monarchy as we know it may not survive. The message offers no details, no evidence, just a warning. But coming on the heels of everything else, it lands like a death sentence. The final statement that was meant to end the crisis has instead opened a door to something darker, something the palace can't control. And everyone waits, holding their breath, wondering what horror is still to come. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.